The child bit me again. I didn't flinch this time. 3 weeks of caring for the feral little thing had taught me better. But I did sigh as I examined the fresh crescent of teeth marks on my forearm. Purple blood welled up from her bite, mixing with the red of mine where she'd broken the skin. You know, I said quietly, keeping my voice low, and even the way Dr. Yusuf had taught me, most kids just throw tantrums. You're really committed to the whole wild animal aesthetic. She hissed at me from the corner of the supply tent, her silver eyes catching the dim light filtering through the canvas. Those eyes were wrong for a human child, too large, too luminous, pupils that contracted to vertical slits when she was frightened. Which was always. Camp 17 sat in the Dust Bowl of what used to be Eastern Turkey, home to 40,000 refugees from a dozen worlds. The hegemony's expansion had scattered species across the galaxy like seeds in a storm. And humanity, newcomers to the cosmic stage, had somehow become the galaxy's reluctant innkeepers. We were too poor to matter, too stubborn to turn people away. I was just Marcus Cole, a former paramedic from Chicago, who'd lost everything in the Cascade riots and found himself here, changing bandages and distributing ration packs to beings whose languages I couldn't speak, and whose anatomies I couldn't speak, and whose anatomies barely understood. But this girl, this strange, violent, beautiful child, she was different. Found her 3 weeks ago, I'd told Administrator Chen during my last report. She was hiding in a drainage pipe, eating rats, raw dotchi. Chen had rubbed his temples. Species? Unknown. Her blood runs purple. She can see in the dark, and she has some kind of, I don't know, shimmer to her skin when she's calm. Which is never any luck communicating. She understands me. I'm certain of it. She just doesn't trust anyone enough to respond. That had been the truth. In those early days, she'd watched me with the calculating intensity of a predator assessing threat levels. I'd learned not to approach her directly, not to make sudden movements, not to raise my voice. I left food at the entrance of the medical tent and retreated, letting her come to it on her own terms. Slowly, so slowly it felt like watching mountains form, she'd begun to tolerate my presence. Now she was biting me instead of trying to claw my eyes out. Progress. I'm going to clean this, I said, reaching for the antiseptic kit. And then I'm going to make dinner. You're welcome to join me, or you can keep pretending you don't understand a word I'm saying. I turned my back on her, a calculated risk, and began treating the wound. Behind me I heard the softest rustle of movement. When I turned back, she was 2 feet closer, her dirty face tilted with something that might have been curiosity. Yeah, I said softly. I see you too. 3 days later, everything changed. I was in the middle of teaching her to use utensils. She kept trying to stab the spoon through the table, which at least showed spirit when Kofi burst through the tent flap. Marcus. Ships. Big ones. Coming down in the eastern sector. My blood went cold. In my experience, big ships meant military ships, and military ships meant trouble. How many? Dozen at least. Heavy cruisers. Marcus. They're Valdrassi. The spoon clattered from the girl's hand. Her whole body went rigid, those silver eyes widening with what I recognized instantly as terror. Hey. I crouched down to her level, keeping my voice calm even as my heart raced. It's okay. Whatever happens, I won't let them hurt you. She shook her head violently, and for the first time in 3 weeks, she spoke. Hide, she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. Must hide. They cannot find. Who? The Valdrassi? Are they after you? But she was already bolting for the back of the tent, burrowing into a pile of blankets like a wounded animal seeking its den. I had about 30 seconds to make a decision. I chose. The Valdrassi delegation swept through Camp 17 like a blade through silk, elegant, cold, and leaving everything changed in their wake. Their soldiers wore ceremonial armor that probably cost more than our entire medical budget. And they moved with the trained precision of beings who had never known hunger or fear. At their center walked a figure that made the breath catch in my throat. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin the color of midnight that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her hair fell in elaborate braids woven with what looked like living silver threads, and her eyes were the same impossible silver as the child's. I am Empress Valindra Mornkai, she announced, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd without effort. Sovereign of the Valdrassi hegemony. I come seeking what was taken from me. Administrator Chen stepped forward, visibly trembling. Your Imperial Majesty, we are honored by your presence. How may we assist? 12 years ago, my daughter was stolen from our Krosh world during a raider attack. Our intelligence indicates the vessel carrying her crashed on this planet. The Empress's voice was controlled, measured, but I could hear something underneath it. Something raw. I have searched every world between here and the core. I will search this one until I find her, or until there is nothing left to search. The threat hung in the air like smoke. We will cooperate fully. Chen stammered. Full access to all records, all personnel. I require more than cooperation. The Empress raised one hand and her soldiers began to spread out through the camp. I require the truth. If anyone here has seen a Valdrassi child, Any child with silver eyes and night-dark skin, they will tell me now. And if I discover that anyone has hidden this information from me. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. I stood frozen at the edge of the crowd, my mind racing. The girl in my tent. Her silver eyes. Her violet blood. Her shimmer skin. She wasn't some unknown species. She was the missing heir to the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And she was absolutely, desperately terrified of being found. We have children from many worlds, Chen was saying. If you could provide more details, she would be 13 standard years now. She was 5 when she was taken. For just a moment, the Empress's composure cracked. She had a small mark behind her left ear. A birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. She loved to climb, to hide in small spaces. She would not come when called. She was stubborn, even then. Something twisted in my chest. The girl in my tent had that mark. I'd seen it when I'd finally convinced her to let me check her for injuries. If anyone has information, the Empress continued, her voice hardening again, they should know that the reward for her safe return will be substantial. And the punishment for her concealment will be severe. The crowd murmured anxiously. I saw people glancing at each other, trying to remember if they'd seen anything unusual. I should speak up. I knew I should. This was an Empress, a being with the power to glass our entire planet if she chose. Hiding her daughter was beyond foolish. It was suicidal. But I kept seeing the girl's face when she'd heard the Valdrassi were coming. The way she'd said hide. Pure animal terror in her eyes. Something was wrong here. Something beyond a simple kidnapping. I slipped away from the crowd while everyone was focused on the Empress, moving as quickly as I dared back toward the medical tent. She was exactly where I'd left her, buried in blankets, barely breathing. Hey, I said softly, kneeling beside her. I need you to tell me what's happening. That woman out there, the Empress, she says she's your mother. She says you were stolen. The girl's head emerged from the blankets just enough for me to see her eyes wide and wet with tears. Not stolen, she whispered. Sent away. To protect. Protect you from what? From her. The words hit me like a physical blow. I rocked back on my heels, trying to process. Your mother, not mother. Mother died. She is. Mekpising. The girl struggled with the words, with language she'd barely used in years. She took throne. Took everything. Would have taken me too. Made example. Father's loyalists. They smuggled me away. Said she would never stop looking. So the raiders were supposed to take me somewhere safe. But ship was attacked. Real raiders. Everyone died. She shuddered. I hid. For a long time. Then humans found me. I sat back, my mind reeling. The benevolent Empress searching for her lost daughter was actually a usurper hunting down the legitimate heir, the last threat to her stolen throne. And I was the only thing standing between a traumatized child and the most powerful woman in the galaxy. Okay, I said, more to myself than to her. Okay, we need to think, you will give me to her. It wasn't a question. The girl's voice was flat, resigned. Everyone gives things to her, she takes what she wants. I looked at this child, this princess, this heir to an empire, curled up in a pile of dirty blankets in a refugee camp on a backwater planet. She'd been running since she was 5 years old. She'd watched everyone who tried to protect her die. She'd survived on rats and fear for God knew how long. And she'd already accepted that I would betray her too. No, I said quietly. I won't. For the first time, something other than fear flickered in those silver eyes. Why? Because someone has to start being decent to you eventually. Might as well be me. Hiding a child from an empress with orbital surveillance capabilities turned out to be exactly as difficult as it sounded. For 3 days, I kept the girl. She finally told me her name was Cyril, in constant motion. We moved through the camp's underground maintenance tunnels, slept in different locations each night, avoided any patterns that the Valdrassi scanning equipment might detect. I learned more about her in those 3 days than I had in the 3 weeks before. She was brilliant, of course she was, with a mind like a knife wrapped in silk. When she finally started talking, really talking, her observations about the camp's social dynamics and security weaknesses were sharper than anything our professional staff had managed. She was also deeply, profoundly broken. On Valdrassi Prime, she told me one night, huddled in a storage room while patrols passed overhead, children of the blood are tested from birth. Measured. Ranked. Those who fail are removed from succession. Removed how? She was quiet for a long moment. There are many ways to remove a child without killing them. Mind scrubbing. Genetic modification. Exile to monastery worlds. A pause. My half-brother was exiled when he was 4. I never saw him again. Jesus, your deity cannot help him. No one can. I didn't correct her theology. It didn't seem like the moment. Valindra was my father's second consort, Cyril continued. She had no blood claim to the throne. But she was ambitious. When my mother died, they said it was illness. but everyone whispered poison. Valindra moved quickly. Father was weak with grief. She convinced him to make her regent for me, to protect me until I came of age. But that's not what she wanted. No. She wanted the throne for herself. For her bloodline. As long as I lived, I was a threat. Terrell's voice was eerily calm, as if she were discussing ancient history, rather than her own near murder. The night she planned to have me declared mentally unfit, Father's old guards smuggled me out. They died getting me to the ship. And you've been running ever since. Yes. Thought about what it would do to a child being hunted like that. Never staying anywhere long enough to feel safe. Watching everyone who helped her die or disappear. Learning that the only way to survive was to trust no one, depend on nothing, need nobody. No wonder she'd been feral when I found her. Cyril, I said carefully, what happens if you're found? If she takes you back to Valdrassi Prime? If I am fortunate, she will have me declared unfit and mind scrubbed. I will live out my days as a shell, aware of nothing, threatening no one. And if you're not fortunate, then there will be an accident. A tragic illness. A ceremonial mourning period. Her voice was as flat as still water. And then she will be free to name her own heir, her own bloodline on the throne. I clenched my fists until my knuckles went white. We're not going to let that happen. You cannot stop an empress. Watch me. On the fourth day, our luck ran out. A Valdrassi patrol caught us in the east sector, boxed in between two supply warehouses with nowhere to run. 6 soldiers in power armor, pulse rifles trained on us with mechanical precision. Stand down, human, the patrol leader commanded. Surrender the girl, and you will be permitted to live. I stepped in front of Cyril, spreading my arms. She's under my protection. Your protection means nothing. She belongs to the Empire. She belongs to herself. The patrol leader made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are either very brave or very stupid, human. Perhaps both. He raised his rifle. Final warning. Behind me, I felt Cyril trembling. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. Wait. She stepped around me and I tried to grab her arm, but she slipped past my reach with the grace of someone who'd spent years evading capture. I will go with you, she said to the patrol leader. But only if you guarantee this human's safety. He has committed no crime. He did not know who I was. Cyril, no, be quiet, Marcus. Her voice held a tone I hadn't heard before. Command, authority, the birthright of an empress. This is not your decision. The patrol leader studied her for a long moment. You speak as one who is accustomed to giving orders. I speak as one who is tired of running. Cyril lifted her chin. Take me to her. But spare the human. He was kind to me when no one else was. He deserves better than execution for an accident of compassion. I watched helplessly as the soldiers moved to flank her, as they began leading her away toward the Valdrassi command post. At the last moment she turned back to look at me. Thank you, she said quietly, for being decent. And then she was gone. I should have walked away. I should have counted myself lucky to be alive, gone back to my tent, continued my work at the camp, and tried to forget that I'd ever found a strange girl eating rats in a drainage pipe. Instead, I spent the next 6 hours breaking into the Valdrassi command post. Don't ask me how. I'm not proud of all of it. There was bribery involved and a small explosion as a distraction, and at one point I had to climb through a ventilation shaft that was definitely not rated for human-sized bodies. But I made it. The chamber where they were holding Cyril was deep in the heart of the compound, behind energy barriers and biometric locks. I found a maintenance access point and wedged myself into an observation alcove just as the Empress herself swept into the room. Leave us, Valindra commanded her guards. The soldiers hesitated. Now. They filed out. The energy barrier hummed back into place. And the Empress stood face to face with the child she had been hunting for 12 years. Cyril looked so small. So fragile. The regal bearing she'd shown with the patrol had crumbled, leaving behind the terrified girl who'd bitten my arm 3 weeks ago. Look at you, Valindra said softly, circling her. Dirty. Malnourished. Living among humans like a common refugee. She shook her head. Your father would be ashamed. My father loved me. Your father was weak. His love made him weak. It made the entire empire weak. The Empress stopped circling, facing Cyril directly. I do not have that flaw. No, Cyril agreed. You have no love at all. For a moment, something flickered across Valindra's face, too fast to identify, but I saw it. Then her composure reasserted itself. I'm going to give you a choice, child. A mercy I offer to no one else. I know your mercies. You will renounce your claim to the throne. Publicly, ceremonially, irrevocably. You will accept a position in the Temple of Silence, comfortable, honorable, but removed from all politics forever. In return, you will live. You will be cared for. You will never want for anything. Except freedom. Except my birthright. Except justice for my mother. Valindra's eyes hardened. Your mother died of illness. Ancient history, best forgotten. My mother was murdered. By you. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows many things. Few of them are true. The Empress leaned close, her voice dropping to something almost intimate. Think carefully, little one. This is the only offer you will receive. Tomorrow I address the camp, a ceremony to celebrate our reunion. You will either stand beside me and renounce your claim, or you will not stand at all. The choice is yours. She turned and swept toward the exit. I'll never renounce, Cyril called after her. I'll never give you that satisfaction. Vailindra paused at the threshold. Then I will mourn you as a tragic casualty of your long captivity. A child too damaged by her ordeal to survive. It will be very moving. I may even shed a tear. The barrier hummed open then closed behind her. And Cyril crumbled to the floor, her whole body shaking with suppressed sobs. I had maybe 30 seconds before the guards returned. I pressed myself against the maintenance access, trying to think. Tomorrow. A public ceremony. Either Cyril renounced her claim or she died. Unless I found another way. I found Kofi at 3 in the morning, hunched over a communication array he'd been secretly building for months. I need to broadcast a message, I said without preamble. Empire-wide, can you do it? Kofi stared at me. Brother, have you lost your mind? Probably. Can you do it? That's Valdrassi encryption. Military grade. Even if I could crack it, which I cannot confirm or deny, broadcasting anything would light us up like a signal flare. They'd trace it back here in minutes. Minutes is all I need. Kofi was quiet for a long moment. Then, this is about the girl. This is about doing what's right. Those are often the same thing with you. He sighed, rubbing his face with both hands. What kind of message? I told him. His eyes went wider with every word. You're insane, he said when I finished. Probably. They'll execute you. Probably. The camp could face retaliation. Everyone here? I know. My voice cracked slightly. I know. But Kofi, she's 13 years old. She's been running her whole life. She's never known a single day of safety or peace. And tomorrow they're going to kill her on a stage in front of thousands of people unless someone does something. Someone else could do something. Someone with resources. Power. An army. But they won't. That's the thing about power, it makes people cautious. Calculating. They weigh costs and benefits and decide that one child isn't worth the risk. I met his eyes. I don't have anything to lose. I already lost everything that mattered back in Chicago. This is the only thing I can do that means anything. Kofi held my gaze for a long moment. Then he turned back to his equipment and began typing. You'll have 3 minutes of broadcast time before they shut us down. Make it count. The ceremony was scheduled for noon. The Valdrassi had constructed a grand stage in the camp's central square, complete with ceremonial banners and floating holoprojectors that would carry Vailindra's image across the galaxy. Thousands of refugees had gathered, some by choice, most by implied threat. I pushed through the crowd until I was near the front, close enough to see the stage clearly. Vailindra stood at the center, resplendent in robes that seemed to drink the sunlight. Her guards flanked her in perfect formation. And there, beside her, pale and trembling, Cyril. They'd cleaned her up. Dressed her in ceremonial white, the color of mourning in Valdrassi culture. Her hair had been braided with the same silver threads as the Empress's, marking her as blood of the blood. She looked like a sacrifice prepared for the altar. Citizens of the hegemony, Vailindra began, her voice carrying through the square. For 12 years, I have searched for my beloved daughter. Now, I whispered into my comm unit. Kofi's voice crackled back, broadcasting. Every holoprojector in the square flickered. Vailindra's image was replaced by mine, a dirty, tired human in refugee camp clothes, standing in front of a storage container. My name is Marcus Cole, I heard myself saying in the pre-recorded message. I'm nobody. A refugee worker on a backwater planet. But I found something that the galaxy needs to know. On stage, I could see Vailindra's face contort with rage. Guards began rushing toward the communication towers. 3 weeks ago, I found a child in a drainage pipe. Starving. Feral. Touched. Alone. Her name is Cyril Mornkai, and she is the legitimate heir to the Valdrassi throne. The crowd erupted in confused murmurs. On stage, Cyril's head snapped up, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found me. She wasn't kidnapped by raiders. She was smuggled away by loyalists who knew the truth, that Empress Vailindra murdered her mother and stole the throne. That Vailindra has spent 12 years hunting down a child who committed no crime except being born with a better claim to power. The guards had reached the first tower. Kofi's time estimate was holding, barely. I don't have proof. I don't have an army. I don't have anything except my word. But I'm asking anyone out there who remembers the old emperor, who remembers Cyril's mother, who knows that something is wrong in the hegemony. I'm asking you to witness this. Watch what happens next. Watch what Vailindra does to a 13-year-old girl who has committed no crime. The holoprojectors flickered again, then went dead. My face vanished, replaced by Vailindra's furious visage. Seize him, she commanded, pointing directly at me in the crowd. Seize the human. Guards surged toward me. I didn't run. Wait. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Everyone, guards, crowds, the Empress herself, froze. Cyril had stepped forward to the edge of the stage, her small form trembling but her voice steady. "I am Cyril Mornkai," she announced. "Daughter of Emperor Viral and Empress Consort Lylendra. I am the blood of the blood, the heir of the heir. And I accuse Vailendra of murder, usurpation, and tyranny." "Child, you are confused," Vailendra began. "I am not a child." Cyril's voice rang with power that seemed impossible from such a small body. "I have been running since I was 5 years old. I have watched everyone who tried to help me die. I have survived on rats and fear, and the memory of my father's face." She turned to face the hovering cameras that were still broadcasting locally. "And now, I am done running." She pulled something from her sleeve, a small crystalline pendant, that caught the light, and scattered it into 1,000 rainbows. "This is my mother's soul stone. It was given to me the night I fled. It contains her memories. Her truth." She held it high, including her final moments. "When Vailendra poisoned her while she lay recovering from my birth." The crowd gasped. Even some of the guards looked uncertain. Vailendra's composure cracked. "That proves nothing. A forgery, clearly, then let it be examined. Let the Temple of Ancestors verify its authenticity." Cyril's voice was implacable. "Unless the Empress has something to hide." For a long moment the two of them faced each other, the false Empress and the true heir. Then Vailendra smiled. "You've grown bold, little one. I almost admire it." She raised her hand. "But bold is not the same as wise. Guards. The girl is clearly deranged from her long captivity. Take her to the medical wing for treatment." "No." The voice came from behind Vailendra. One of her own guards, an older Valdrassi with gray at his temples, had stepped forward. "Commander Terrell," Vailendra said coldly. "You forget yourself." "I forget nothing, Empress." Commander's voice was heavy with decades of suppressed grief. "I served your husband. I served your predecessor. I watched Lylendra's light fade while you smiled over her sickbed." He knelt before Cyril. "I should have acted sooner. I should have been braver. But I am here now, my princess. And I will stand with you whatever comes." One by one, other guards began to kneel. Not all of them, not even most. But enough. Enough to shatter Vailendra's illusion of absolute control. The Empress looked around at her fragmenting power base, at the cameras still broadcasting, at the human guards who had formed a protective ring around me at the crowd's edge. "This is not over," she hissed. "No," Cyril agreed. "It's just beginning." The Civil War, if you could call it that, lasted 6 weeks. Most of it happened far from Earth in the halls of power in Valdrassi Prime and the military installations scattered across the hegemony. Once Cyril's broadcasts went viral, a 13-year-old accusing an Empress of murder, clutching her dead mother's memory stone. The fault lines that had been hidden for 12 years tore open. Old loyalists emerged from hiding. Military commanders who had served Cyril's father declared for the true heir. The Temple of Ancestors verified the soul stone's authenticity, and its contents, Lylendra's final moments, her whispered warning to her daughter, the face of Vailendra leaning over her with a poisoned cup, spread across the empire like wildfire. In the end, Vailendra fled. Her inner circle scattered. The throne that she had stolen sat empty, waiting. I didn't see most of it. I spent those 6 weeks in protective custody, partly for my own safety, partly because no one quite knew what to do with the human who had accidentally started an interstellar revolution. When they finally came for me, I expected soldiers. Instead, I got Cyril. He stood in the doorway of my holding cell, taller than I remembered, or maybe just standing straighter. The ceremonial robes were gone, replaced by practical traveling clothes. But her eyes were the same, silver and luminous and older than any child's should be. "Marcus Cole," she said formally. "The Imperial Council has reviewed your case." My heart sank. And they have decided that you are guilty of multiple crimes against the hegemony, interfering with imperial business, harboring a fugitive, broadcasting seditious material. She paused. "The sentence is death." Closed my eyes. Well, at least it had been worth it. However, Cyril continued, and something in her voice made me look up. "The Empress has the right to grant clemency in extraordinary circumstances. As I am now Empress." She stepped forward, and suddenly she wasn't an Empress at all. She was just a girl who had bitten my arm and hidden in my blankets, and whispered, "Thank you for being decent. I'm commuting your sentence," she said, her formal tone cracking, "to permanent exile on your home planet with a modest pension and the eternal gratitude of the Valdrassi throne." A pension. A large pension. A smile tugged at her lips. And a title. "We're making you an honorary noble." The council was not pleased, but I told them that the human who saved my life could be called whatever he wished. I laughed, actually laughed for the first time in weeks. I don't know what to do with a title. Neither do I most days. She looked down at her hands. "Marcus, I don't know how to be an Empress." I spent so long just trying to survive that I never learned how to rule. You'll figure it out. Will I? Her voice was small. Everyone expects me to be something. A symbol. A leader. A weapon against everything Valindra represented. But I'm just... She trailed off. You're just a kid who's survived the unsurvivable, I said gently. And that's enough. That's more than enough. She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the feral creature who had watched me from the shadows of a medical tent, waiting to see if I would hurt her like everyone else. Will you stay? She asked quietly. I know Earth is your home, but I don't have anyone I trust. Not really. The council has agendas. The military has factions. Everyone wants something from me. She hesitated. You just wanted me to eat with a spoon instead of stabbing the table. I should have said no. I had a life to rebuild. A planet full of humans who needed help. A world where I made sense and understood the rules. But I looked at this girl. This Empress, who had spent her whole life running from people who were supposed to protect her. On one condition, I said. Name it. I get to keep calling you Cyril. Her laugh was bright and unexpected, like sunlight breaking through clouds. I think I can allow that. 6 months later, I stood beside the new Empress at her coronation ceremony, wearing robes that cost more than my entire previous life and trying not to trip over my own feet. The Temple of Ancestors was vast beyond imagining, its walls lined with the preserved memory stones of 1,000 generations of Valdrassi rulers. At its heart, Cyril knelt to receive the crown of stars, a delicate circlet that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The high priestess intoned the ancient words. The crowd of nobles and dignitaries watched with expressions ranging from hope to calculation to barely concealed hostility. The cameras broadcast the moment across the galaxy. And I just watched Cyril. She had grown so much in these months. Not physically, she was still small for her age, still recovering from years of malnutrition, but in the way she carried herself. The feral watchfulness had transformed into something else, a quiet alertness, a readiness to respond rather than react. She caught me looking and just for a moment let her formal mask slip. One corner of her mouth quirked up in something too small to be a smile but too warm to be anything else. I found the alien Empress's missing child in a human refugee camp. She had been searching for 12 years. But she had never been searching for the right thing. Valindra had hunted a threat, an obstacle, a problem to be eliminated. She had looked at a child and seen only a claim to power. I had looked at the same child and seen someone who needed help. Maybe that was the difference. Maybe that was what humans could offer a galaxy full of ancient, powerful, calculating species. The simple willingness to see a person instead of a problem. The crown settled onto Cyril's head. The crowd erupted in formal acclaim. And somewhere I knew, Valindra was watching, exiled and powerless, forced to witness everything she had tried to destroy rising from the ashes. Later that night, after the ceremony and the feast and the endless parade of dignitaries, I found Cyril on a balcony overlooking the capital city. She had taken off the crown and set it aside like a particularly heavy hat. How do you feel? I asked, joining her at the railing. Terrified, she admitted. Also, hopeful? Is that strange? Not at all. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city spread out below us like a galaxy in miniature. I've been thinking, Cyril said eventually, about what you said. About humans. About how you don't have anything except stubbornness and the refusal to give up. I said that? Something like it. When I asked why you were helping me. I didn't remember saying exactly that, but it sounded right. You know what I think. She turned to face me, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. I think that's not weakness. I think that's the greatest strength in the galaxy. All those powerful species, all those ancient civilizations, they calculate. They scheme. They measure costs against benefits. She shook her head. But you just decided to help a feral child eating rats in a drainage pipe because she needed help. No calculation. No scheme. Just decency. Decency's not much of a superpower. It's the only one that matters. She reached out and took my hand, a simple gesture, but one that would have been impossible 6 months ago. The girl who had trusted no one, needed nobody, depended on nothing. Stay, she said again as she had before. But this time it wasn't a request. It was an offer. For how long? As long as you want. As long as I need someone to remind me that power isn't everything. That sometimes the right choice is the simple one. She squeezed my hand. As long as we both shall live. I looked at this girl, this Empress, who had come so far from the shadows of a drainage pipe, who had faced down a tyrant and reclaimed her birthright, who still, after everything, reached for human kindness, like a plant reaching for sunlight. Okay, I said. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be.